The medical bay was quiet. The only sounds a faint hum of machinery and the soft rustle of the healer's robes as she moved. Her hands glowed faintly with the soothing, iridescent energy she channeled to heal the wounded and comfort the suffering. She worked meticulously, her movements graceful and practiced as she checked each monitor and adjusted each bandage. Her people believed that compassion and care were the essence of life itself. She embodied this belief fully, her touch a balm to all who found themselves in her care. The warrior lay still, his muscular form a stark contrast to her people's slender frames. His skin was marred by countless scars, silent witnesses to the battles he had endured. She had seen many like him, soldiers brought to her care from distant parts of the galaxy, each carrying their own tales of struggle and survival. Yet, this human was different. Something about him radiated an intensity, a barely restrained force simmering just beneath the surface. He had been unconscious when they brought him to her, his injuries severe. She had tended to him with utmost care, her delicate fingers tracing the wounds, applying the salves and serums that would speed his recovery. The more she worked on him, the more she found herself drawn to him, curious about the stories etched into his skin. Despite the danger he represented, she felt compelled to understand him, to see beyond the surface and uncover the soul within. As she finished tending to his wounds, his eyelids fluttered, and he slowly opened his eyes. His gaze met hers, and for a brief moment, she was struck by the raw, piercing intensity of his stare. His eyes held a depth she had rarely seen, a mixture of pain, strength, and something darker, a hint of the power he kept hidden, locked away. "You saved me," he murmured, his voice rough, like stones grinding against one another. She nodded, her gaze steady as she met his eyes. "Yes. You were injured, but you're safe now," she replied softly, her voice carrying a gentle reassurance. He studied her, his expression a mixture of gratitude and suspicion, as though he was unused to such kindness. A few days passed, and he grew stronger. She attended to him diligently, helping him through his recovery, offering him quiet companionship in the stillness of the medical bay. They spoke little, but with each passing day, an unspoken understanding grew between them, a fragile bond forged in the silent moments of shared vulnerability. She began to sense the hidden strength within him, a power unlike anything she had encountered before. One evening, as she applied a fresh bandage to a wound on his side, he suddenly stiffened, his hand moving instinctively to grip her wrist. She froze, her eyes widening as she felt the strength of his grasp, his fingers pressing into her skin with a force that was both thrilling and terrifying. "You shouldn't be near me," he muttered, his voice low, a warning laced with an edge of fear. She felt a tremor of unease but remained calm, her voice steady as she replied, "You are my patient. I am here to help you heal." His gaze darkened, a flicker of something primal flashing in his eyes. "You don't understand. I am dangerous. There's a force inside me, a power I can barely control. If I were to lose control..." He trailed off, his grip loosening as he looked away, his expression haunted. She felt a pang of sympathy, her heart softening as she watched him struggle with his fear and self-doubt. Despite his strength, he was clearly burdened by a sense of isolation, a fear of hurting those around him. Gently, she placed her hand on his, offering him a reassuring touch. "I don't believe you are dangerous. You are a warrior, yes, but you are also a being with a heart, with compassion. I can see it in your eyes." He looked at her, a flicker of hope crossing his features, quickly overshadowed by doubt. "My people, we are trained to fight, to destroy. I am a weapon, forged in the fires of battle. There is a darkness within me, something that cannot be tamed." She listened quietly, sensing the depth of his pain, the weight of his words. He had lived a life of conflict, carrying the scars not only on his body but within his soul. She reached for his hand, holding it gently, her touch warm and comforting. "Perhaps that darkness can be overcome," she said softly. "I believe there is light within you, a strength that goes beyond mere power." For a moment, he seemed to consider her words, a flicker of something vulnerable crossing his expression. But then, as if to challenge her belief, a surge of energy rippled through him, an untamed force that crackled in the air, distorting the space around him. She stumbled back, her eyes wide with shock as she watched the raw power radiate from him, a tempest barely contained. He gritted his teeth, his body tense as he struggled to contain the energy within. This "This is what I am," he said, his voice strained. "A force of destruction, a weapon." She could see the strain in his eyes, the effort it took for him to hold back the power coursing through him. She took a step forward, her voice firm as she said, "You are more than that. You are capable of controlling this power, of channeling it for good. Let me help you." He looked at her, a mixture of frustration and despair in his gaze. "Why? Why would you want to help someone like me?" "Because I believe in you," she replied simply, her words carrying a quiet conviction that seemed to reach him. Over the following days, she stayed by his side, guiding him through exercises to help him harness his energy, to control the force within him. She taught him techniques from her people, meditative practices that allowed him to center himself, to find balance in the chaos. At first, he struggled, the power within him slipping out of control, erupting in bursts of energy that threatened to destroy everything around them. But she remained patient, encouraging him with gentle words and a steady presence. Slowly, he began to gain control, learning to master the force that had once dominated him. As he grew stronger, he also grew closer to her, his walls slowly crumbling as he allowed himself to trust her, to believe in the possibility of redemption. One night, as they sat together beneath the vast expanse of stars visible through the medical bay's windows, he turned to her, his gaze softened, his expression open in a way she had never seen before. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You've given me something I never thought I could have, a chance to be more than just a weapon." She smiled, her heart swelling with warmth as she looked at him. "You were never just a weapon. You are a being of strength and compassion. You have the power to create, to protect, not just to destroy." In that moment, as they sat together under the stars, she knew that she had found something precious, a connection that transcended words, a bond forged not in conflict but in understanding. They were two souls from different worlds, bound together by the shared struggle to find meaning, to heal wounds that ran deeper than flesh. Their journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, battles to fight, and obstacles to overcome. But for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope, a sense of purpose that went beyond survival. He had found someone who saw him for who he truly was, who believed in his potential, his worth. And as they faced the uncertain future together, he knew that he would protect her, not as a weapon, but as a guardian, a warrior who had finally found his way home. Days turned into weeks, and the warrior's recovery continued with remarkable progress. The healer remained by his side, her presence a constant reminder of the peace he could never seem to grasp. Yet, under her care, he found moments of stillness that felt almost foreign, moments when the turmoil inside him quieted. She guided him in meditation each morning, helping him focus his mind, teaching him how to balance the immense power within. One evening, after a particularly intense session, she took him to a quiet grove beyond the medical bay, a hidden place filled with soft, glowing plants and bioluminescent streams that reflected the sky. The air was thick with the scent of alien flowers, their fragrance both sweet and earthy. They sat side by side on the edge of the stream, watching the glowing water ripple under the starlight. He looked at her, the tranquil beauty of their surroundings filling him with a strange sense of calm. "All of this," he murmured, "it's hard for me to understand. My world. It's nothing like this." She smiled, her gaze gentle. "Peace can seem foreign to those who have known only war. But it's always within reach. You've begun to see it, to feel it. That's a start." He shook his head, still struggling with the idea. "For years, I've been trained to see threats, to be on guard every moment. Even now, I can't help but think of everything here as vulnerable. I can't stop thinking about protecting it, about all the things that could threaten it." She tilted her head, studying him with compassion. "Perhaps that desire to protect is part of who you are, not a flaw, but a strength." They were silent for a while, and then he spoke, his voice softer, hesitant. Before everything happened, before the battles, I did have a place like this. A place where I felt at home." She looked at him, her curiosity evident. "What was it like?" He smiled, an expression that transformed his face, softening the harsh lines, making him look younger, almost unguarded. There was a field, wild and overgrown, stretching out as far as you could see. I used to go there at dawn, just to watch the sun rise. It was the one place I didn't have to worry about anything. The healer placed her hand on his arm, her touch a quiet reassurance. "You carry that place within you, even now. It's still part of who you are. He met her gaze, a sense of gratitude filling him. You have no idea how much this means to me, he said. I thought I had lost everything that made me more than just a weapon. Her hand lingered on his arm for a moment longer, and then she pulled it away, her expression tender. You are more than you know. I only helped you see it. The peace of the moment was interrupted suddenly by the sharp sound of a distant alarm, echoing from the direction of the medical bay. They both tensed, instinct taking over, and he was on his feet in an instant, the calm of the evening replaced by a familiar readiness. Stay here, he said urgently, his warrior instincts kicking in. I'll check it out. But she shook her head, rising to her feet beside him. I won't let you face this alone. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Without another word, they sprinted back to the medical bay. As they approached, they could see a group of guards standing tensely, their weapons drawn, their faces etched with fear and confusion. At the center of the commotion was a shimmering portal, crackling with energy, a tear in space, pulsing with a dark, ominous force. Through the rift, they could see shadowy figures moving, their forms indistinct but menacing. The warrior's face darkened. He recognized the energy emanating from the portal. It was a remnant of the forces he had battled before. They had tracked him here. His hands clenched into fists as he stepped forward, his body tensing with anticipation. They're here because of me, he said, his voice filled with grim determination. They want what I carry, the power I hold. They won't stop until they have it. The healer placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice steady. Then we will fight them. Together. He turned to look at her, his gaze conflicted. You don't understand. These beings, they are relentless. They'll tear through everything to get to me. I won't let you risk your life for this. She met his eyes, her expression unwavering. You are not alone. I made a promise to help you find peace, and I won't abandon you now. Something within him shifted, and he gave a small nod. He knew he couldn't deny her bravery, nor did he want to. They stood side by side as the shadowy figures emerged from the portal, their forms taking shape, hulking armored beings with dark, gleaming eyes and weapons that seemed to pulse with the same dark energy as the portal. As the attackers advanced, he felt the familiar surge of power awaken within him, the force he had worked so hard to control. But this time, he didn't fight it. Instead, he let it flow through him, embracing the energy, allowing it to shape him into the warrior he needed to be. With a single powerful gesture, he unleashed a wave of energy that rippled outward, sending the attackers staggering back. The healer watched in awe, her heart pounding as she witnessed the true extent of his power. He was magnificent, a being of raw strength and unstoppable determination, a force of nature unleashed. Yet, even as he fought, he remained in control, his power guided, tempered by the balance he had learned under her care. He fought not as a weapon, but as a guardian, defending not only himself but the place that had become his sanctuary, the healer who had become his friend. The battle was fierce, each wave of attackers stronger and more ruthless than the last. The healer fought alongside him, her own powers, small, subtle but powerful in their own way, shielding them, amplifying his strength. Together, they became an unbreakable force, a bond of light against the darkness that threatened to consume them. At last, the portal began to waver, its energy faltering under the relentless assault of their combined power. With one final powerful strike, he sent a surge of energy into the heart of the portal, shattering it in a burst of light that filled the sky. The remaining attackers were pulled back into the void, their forms dissolving as the portal collapsed. As the light faded, he stood there, breathing heavily, his body exhausted but his spirit triumphant. The healer moved to his side, her hand resting on his shoulder as she gazed up at him, pride and admiration in her eyes. You did it, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. You saved us. He looked at her, a soft smile tugging at his lips. We did it. Together. In that moment, he realized that he was no longer bound by his past, no longer defined by the power that had once controlled him. With her guidance, he had found a new purpose, a path of protection, of strength tempered by compassion. The following days passed in a blur of celebration and gratitude. The people of the healer's world honored him, recognizing him not as a weapon but as a hero, a guardian who had protected them in their hour of need. And by his side, they the healer remained, her quiet strength and unwavering belief in him a constant source of solace and hope. As they stood together on a hill overlooking the peaceful landscape, he took her hand in his gaze filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly, "for everything. I don't know where I would be without you." She smiled, her hand warm in his. "You would have found your way, eventually. I only helped you see what was already there." He looked out at the horizon, a sense of peace settling over him. For the first time in his life, he felt whole, free from the shadows that had once haunted him. And he knew that, as long as she was by his side, he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they had forged a bond that went beyond friendship, beyond duty. They were bound by a shared journey, a shared strength, and a future filled with endless possibilities. And as they stood hand in hand, watching the sun rise over a world he had come to love, he knew that he had finally found a place to call home.